Hi friends at Oriole Park. We all miss you very, very much. I'm going to read you a story today. This is called Library Lion by Michelle Kuhnsen. It's a great book. I really hope you enjoy it. Here we go. The Library Lion. One day, a lion came to the library. He walked right past the circulation desk and up into the stacks. Mr. McBee ran down the hall to the head librarian's office. "Miss Merriweather," he called. "No running," said Miss Merriweather, without even looking up. "But there's a lion," said Mr. McBee, "in the library." "Is he breaking any rules?" asked Miss Merriweather. She was very particular about rule breaking. "Well, no," said Mr. McBee, "not really." "Then leave him be." The lion wandered all around the library. He sniffed the card catalog. He rubbed his head against the new book collection. Then he padded over to the story corner and he went to sleep. No one was sure what to do. There weren't any rules about lions in the library. Soon it was time for story hour. There weren't any rules about lions at story hour either. The story lady seemed a little nervous, but she read out the first book's title in good, clear voice. The lion looked up, and the story lady kept reading. The lion stayed for the next story, and the story after that. He waited for another story, but the children began to walk away. "Story hour is over," a little girl told him, "and it's time to go." The lion looked at the children. He looked at the story lady. He looked at the closed books. And then he roared very loud. "Roar!" Miss Merriweather came striding out of her office. "Who is making that noise?" she demanded. "It's the lion," said Mr. McBee. Miss Merriweather marched over to the lion. "If you cannot be quiet, you will have to leave," she said in a stern voice. "Those are the rules." The lion kept roaring, and he sounded sad. The little girl tugged on Miss Merriweather's dress. "If he promises to be quiet, can he come back for story hour tomorrow?" she asked. The lion stopped roaring. He looked at Miss Merriweather. Miss Merriweather looked back, and then she said, "Yes, a nice quiet lion would certainly be allowed to come back for story hour tomorrow." "Hooray!" said the children. The next day, the lion came back. "You were early," said Miss Merriweather. "Story hour is not until 3 o'clock. The lion did not budge. "Very well," said Miss Merriweather. "You might as well make yourself useful." She sent him off to dust the encyclopedia until it was time for story hour. The next day, the lion came early again, and this time Miss Merriweather asked him to lick all the envelopes for the overdue notices. Soon the lion began doing things without even being asked. He dusted the encyclopedias, he licked the envelopes, and he let small children stand on his back to reach books on the highest shelves. Then he curled up in the story corner to wait for the story hour to begin. At first, the people in the library were nervous about the lion, but soon they got used to having him around. In fact, he seemed very well suited for the library. His big feet were quiet on the library floor. He made a comfy backrest for the children at story hour, and he never roared in the library anymore. "What a helpful lion," people said. They patted his soft head as he walked by. "How did we ever get along without him?" Mr. McBee scowled when he heard that. They had always gotten along fine before. No lions were needed. Lions, he thought, could not understand the rules. They did not belong in a library. One day, after he had dusted all the encyclopedias and licked all the envelopes and helped all the small children, the lion padded down the hall to Miss Merriweather's office to see what else there was to do. There was still some time left before story hour. "Hello, lion," said Miss Merriweather. "I know something you can do. You can bring a book back to the stacks for me. Let me just get it down from the shelf." Miss Merriweather stepped up onto the step stool. The book was just out of reach. Miss Merriweather stood on her toes. She stretched out her fingers. "Almost there," she said. Then Miss Merriweather stretched. a bit too far. "Ouch," said Miss Merriweather softly, and she did not get up. "Mr. McBee," she called after a minute. "Mr. McBee." Mr. McBee was at the circulation desk. He could not hear her calling. "Lion," said Miss Merriweather, "please go and get Mr. McBee." The Lion ran down the hall. "No running," Miss Merriweather called after him. The Lion put his big paws in front of the circulation desk and looked at Mr. McBee. "Go away, Lion," said Mr. McBee. "I'm busy." The Lion whined, and he pointed his nose down the hall towards Miss Merriweather's office. Mr. McBee ignored him. Finally, the Lion did the only thing he could think to do. He looked Mr. McBee right in the eye. Then he opened his mouth very wide, and he roared, the loudest roar he had ever roared in his life. Roar! Mr. McBee gasped. "You're not being quiet," he said. "You're breaking the rules." Mr. McBee walked down the hall as fast as he could, and the Lion did not follow him. He had broken the rules, and he knew what that meant. He hung his head and walked toward the doors. Mr. McBee did not notice. "Miss Merriweather," he called as he walked. "Miss Merriweather, the Lion broke the rules. The Lion broke the rules." He burst into Miss Merriweather's office. She was not in her chair. "Miss Merriweather," he asked. "Sometimes," said Miss Merriweather from the floor behind her desk, "there is a good reason to break the rules, even in the library. Now please go call a doctor. I think I've broken my arm." Mr. McBee ran to call a doctor. "No running," Miss Merriweather called after him. The next day, things were back to normal almost. Miss Merriweather's left arm was in a cast. The doctor had told her not to work too hard. "I will have my Lion to help me," Miss Merriweather thought. But the Lion did not come to the library that morning. At 3 o'clock, Miss Merriweather walked over to the story corner. The story lady was just beginning a story, and the Lion was not there. People in the library kept looking up from their books and computer screens, hoping they would see a familiar furry face. But the Lion did not come that day. The Lion did not come the next day or the day after that. One evening, Mr. McBee stopped by Miss Merriweather's office on his way out. "Can I do anything for you before I go, Miss Merriweather?" "No, thank you," said Miss Merriweather. She was looking out the window. Her voice was very quiet, even for the library. Mr. McBee frowned as he walked away. He thought there probably was something he could do for Miss Merriweather. After all, Mr. McBee left the library, but he did not go home. He walked around the neighborhoods, he looked under the cars, he looked behind the bushes, and he looked in backyards, and trash cans, and tree houses. Finally, he circled all the way back to the library. The Lion was sitting outside, looking through the glass doors. "Hello, Lion," said Mr. McBee. The Lion did not turn around. "I thought you might like to know," said Mr. McBee, "that there's a new rule at the library. No roaring allowed unless you have a very good reason. Say, if you're trying to help a friend who's been hurt, for example." The Lion's ears twitched, and he turned around. Mr. McBee was already walking away. The next day, Mr. McBee walked down the hall to Miss Merriweather's office. "What is it, Mr. McBee?" asked Miss Merriweather in her new, sad, quiet voice. "I thought you would like to know that there's a lion in the library." Miss Merriweather jumped up from her chair and ran down the hall. Mr. McBee smiled. "No running." Miss Merriweather did not listen. Sometimes there was a good reason to break the rules, even in the library. Thanks everybody for listening. We all miss you at Oriole Park and in Wyoming, and we can't wait to see you again soon. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.